Have you ever looked around your quiet home and thought, is it strange that I'm okay being here by myself? Maybe you've scrolled past another smiling couple on social media or been asked, again, why you don't get out more. And maybe deep down, you've wondered if choosing to be alone, truly alone, is a sign that something's missing in you. But what if it's not? What if instead of being something to fix, your solitude is actually a sign that you've arrived somewhere powerful, somewhere most people never get to go? If you're an older woman living alone, without a partner, without children close by, or maybe even without many friends, this video is for you. Because we're not here to feel sorry for you or try to fix your loneliness. We're here to tell the truth. The deeper truth about women like you, who don't just survive without family. They grow, they awaken, they become more themselves than ever before. Let's begin with what no one really talks about. The transformation that happens quietly inside a woman who has spent years giving, sacrificing, waiting for others, only to find herself finally alone. At first, that silence can feel like a punch in the gut. You hear it in the morning when you pour just one cup of coffee. You feel it in the evenings when the phone doesn't ring. And for a while, it might feel like rejection, like absence, like being forgotten. But then, something unexpected starts to shift. That silence, instead of being empty, becomes peaceful. The space you thought would echo with sorrow becomes a sanctuary. You begin to hear your own thoughts again, your real thoughts, not just the ones filtered through someone else's expectations. And in that stillness, the woman you used to be begins to wake up. She's been there all along, buried under years of trying to be everything for everyone. She's the part of you that got tired of apologizing for needing rest, for being emotional, for not always being okay. And now, without the distractions of caretaking, pleasing, performing, she stretches her arms and rises. You may not have chosen to be alone, not at first. Life might have handed it to you. Through loss, separation, children growing distant, or friends slowly fading away. But what you choose next is where the truth really starts to take shape. Because that moment, when you realize you're not just alone but actually at peace with it, that's the beginning of something sacred. See, there's a reason why so many older women grow softer in appearance, yet fiercer in spirit. It's because they've lived through enough heartbreak to know what really matters. And they've stopped pretending otherwise. They no longer seek approval from a world that told them their worth was tied to who they loved, how much they served, or how well they aged. That kind of transformation doesn't come from comfort. It comes from surviving what tried to break you. It comes from facing silence and not letting it define you. It comes from saying, I'm still here, and I don't need to be needed to matter. There's a quiet rebellion in that kind of strength, and most people don't know what to do with it. But you do. You feel it. It's the moment you stop apologizing for being too much or not enough. The moment you decide that peace is more valuable than company. The moment you understand that being whole doesn't mean you're done. It means you're finally beginning. Let's talk about what happens when a woman stops chasing love and starts choosing herself instead. For much of your life, maybe you've been told that a woman needs to be chosen to have value. That love. Romantic love, family love, public admiration is the prize. And if you don't have it, something must be missing. But here's the thing. You're still here. You've lost people, yes. Maybe even been abandoned. You've made sacrifices others will never see. You've loved until it hurt. And you're still here. That's not lack. That's power. Because when a woman chooses to be with herself, not out of bitterness but out of clarity, she unlocks something most never will. Freedom. Freedom from waiting to be validated. Freedom from playing small to keep the peace. Freedom from pretending just to keep someone close. That kind of freedom doesn't come with applause. It comes with quiet mornings, strong boundaries, and a calm heart. It comes from years of saying yes to everyone else, and finally saying yes to yourself. Some people will call it cold, others will call it selfish. But you know what it really is? It's sacred. It's the kind of self-trust that can only be earned through pain, reflection, and choosing not to run when the room gets quiet. And once you've tasted that freedom, it's hard to go back. You may not talk about it out loud. You may still get asked, "Aren't you lonely?" And sometimes, yes, you are. But it's a different kind of loneliness now. Not the kind that leaves you hollow. It's the kind that makes you aware of how deeply you value peace, presence, and truth. You've realized that most relationships people brag about aren't built on real connection. They're built on fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of facing the self. And you've walked through that fear. That's not something people can see at a glance, but it changes how you move through the world. You don't beg anymore. You don't chase. You don't cling. You don't keep people around just to fill the silence. Because now you understand, if the love doesn't match your peace, it's not worth it. Let's take a breath together, right here. Just sit in that truth. You don't need to be chosen to matter. You don't need to be someone's other half to be whole. You are not the woman you were at 20, 30, or even 50. You are wiser now. You're grounded. You've lived enough to know that what's real doesn't shrink you. It expands you. And if someone can't meet you at the level of your growth, they're not someone you're meant to carry. That's not arrogance. That's wisdom. What you're doing isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's rare. It's brave. And while the world might not understand a woman who walks through life on her own terms, you do, because you're living it. There's a certain kind of woman who stops searching for love in the usual places, not because she's given up, but because she's begun looking deeper. She's no longer interested in surface-level connection or filling space just to feel less alone. She's after something richer now, something real. This woman isn't running from relationships. She's simply not willing to betray herself to be in one. And that changes everything. Because once a woman chooses herself, not just once, but daily, it rewires how she sees the world. She no longer views her solitude as lack, but as a place of strength. A place where she can hear her own thoughts without noise. Where her decisions aren't influenced by fear of judgment or rejection. Where she finally starts asking herself, not, will they accept me, but, does this feel right to me? That shift is quiet, invisible to others. But inside, it's seismic. You might feel it too. Maybe you've gone to bed one night and realized you're no longer haunted by the silence. Maybe you've sat on the porch with a cup of tea and felt something surprising, peace. Not because everything in life is perfect, but because you're no longer pretending it needs to be. You've made peace with the imperfect, with the broken, with the beautiful mess of becoming someone new in your 60s and beyond. And even though the world may not celebrate that, you know it matters. You've stepped off the path that says you have to be partnered to be valuable. You've chosen a new route, one that goes inward before it goes outward. One that asks hard questions and waits for honest answers. One that teaches you to see your reflection and say, I know her, and I trust her now. But make no mistake, this kind of journey isn't easy. Before the freedom, there's the reckoning. Before the light, there's the dark. Because the truth is, to become a woman who truly chooses herself, you often have to face everything you once avoided. Old memories, old fears, patterns you didn't know were repeating themselves. Maybe you've seen it, the way you kept giving to people who didn't give back, the way you lowered your voice, your needs, your standards just to keep the peace. Maybe you've carried guilt for things that were never yours to carry. And maybe, one day, you got tired. Not angry, not bitter, just tired. Tired of feeling like you had to shrink to stay loved. Tired of feeling invisible in the spaces where you gave your all. Tired of performing, pleasing, and trying to be what everyone else needed. That's when the real work began. You didn't just sit in the sadness. You faced it. You asked yourself the hard questions. What do I really want? What am I afraid of? What kind of love am I still holding out hope for? And the answers came, not all at once, but slowly, like seeds pushing through soil that had been dry for too long. You realized that no one was coming to save you, but you didn't need saving. You needed witnessing. You needed presence. You needed to look at your own reflection and see not a woman abandoned, but a woman awakening. And that's the hardest part for many to understand. That the women who live alone without family, without a traditional support system, are not broken. They're simply on a deeper journey, one that few are willing to take. It takes enormous courage to look within when the world says look outward. It takes strength to sit in silence when everything around you urges you to stay busy, stay social, stay available. But you've done it. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not without pain, but you've done it. You've faced the shadow, the grief, the aching memories, and instead of running, you stayed. That's what makes you powerful. Not loud power, not flashy power, quiet power. The kind that walks into a room and doesn't need to say a word. The kind that listens more than it explains. The kind that sees through masks because it's had to remove its own. You know what emotional emptiness looks like wrapped in charm. You know what manipulation feels like disguised as affection. You know what it's like to be praised in public but dismissed in private. And now, you're no longer seduced by words. You look for energy, presence, truth. And that's why you seem hard to reach. Not because you've closed yourself off, but because your door only opens to what's real. You've worked too hard to build a home within yourself. You've made it warm, safe, peaceful. You've redecorated your heart with compassion, clarity, and confidence. You've cleaned out the old lies, the shame, the smallness. Now anyone who enters has to take off their shoes and bring respect. That's not too much to ask. That's the bare minimum. And you know what? It's okay if that means fewer people show up. You'd rather sit in honest silence than fake togetherness. You'd rather feel the strength of your own presence than beg for someone else's attention. You've come too far to go back now. This version of you, the woman who lives alone, without fanfare, without family close by, is more complete than she's ever been. She doesn't need to be chosen. She chooses. She doesn't fear solitude. She honors it. She doesn't rush to fill empty space. She lets it breathe. That's a revolution in itself. Because we live in a world that still tells older women to settle, to soften, to smile politely, even when they're exhausted, to be grateful for crumbs of affection just so they're not alone. But you said no to that, not with anger, not with drama, but with quiet conviction. You said, I'd rather be alone in truth than lost in a lie. And that, my friend, is a kind of freedom most people never find. Not because they can't, but because they're too afraid to go that deep. But you've gone deep, and you've found something there that can't be explained, only felt. A kind of peace that doesn't need proof. A kind of love that doesn't need another body in the room. A kind of clarity that doesn't demand agreement from others. This is who you are now. And while the world may not always see it, you do. You carry that truth in your posture, your boundaries, your quiet joy. You don't need to convince anyone anymore. You don't need to explain why you live alone. You just do. Because you've learned that being alone isn't a punishment. It's a path, one that leads to the most sacred place of all, home within yourself. By now you've probably realized this path you're on, this quiet, powerful path of living alone without family, isn't just about solitude. It's about becoming whole, not half of a couple, not one piece of a story waiting to be completed. Whole, right now, as you are. There is something unshakable about a woman who no longer looks outside herself for permission to feel joy. Something radiant about someone who doesn't need to be chosen to feel worthy. When you reach this level of self-understanding, of emotional maturity, you stop grasping for people who don't see you, and you start gravitating toward peace. That peace may come in unexpected ways. A morning walk where you stop to notice how golden the sunlight feels on your skin. A quiet evening with a book that stirs something deep inside you. A moment of reflection when you realize you are no longer chasing, you're attracting, not with effort or performance, but with truth. And that truth makes you magnetic. It's the kind of magnetism that can't be faked. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to be loud to be heard. When you walk into a room, there's a shift, not because you're demanding attention, but because your energy says, I know who I am now. I've earned this presence. I've paid for it in silence, in healing, in years of learning what not to tolerate. That's what makes you powerful. But power, for you, no longer looks like control or confrontation. It looks like discernment. It looks like walking away from what no longer aligns. It looks like choosing conversations that feel nourishing, not draining. Relationships that feel mutual, not one-sided. It's the ability to say no without guilt, to set boundaries without explanation, to honor your time like the sacred thing it is. You don't need to be everyone's favorite anymore. You just need to be faithful to yourself. And yet, this version of you isn't closed off to love. Far from it. You still long to be held, to be seen, to be chosen. But you're no longer willing to sacrifice your essence for it. You've outgrown the kind of love that demands you shrink. That tells you to soften your strength or hide your feelings just to keep the peace. You're looking for something different now. A kind of connection that honors your wholeness, not one that asks you to divide yourself into more manageable parts. Someone who understands that love isn't about possession or performance. It's about presence, emotional depth, mutual growth. And until that love comes, if it ever does, you remain loyal to your own soul. Not because you've closed the door, but because you've learned the difference between settling and choosing, between being needed and being respected, between being desired and being deeply valued. You've become fluent in the language of authenticity, and now you only respond to fluency in return. That confuses people sometimes, especially those who are still living from a place of emotional neediness, or who have never done the hard work of looking inward. They see your strength and mistake it for pride. They see your solitude and label it bitterness. They see your boundaries and call them walls. But you know better. You didn't build a wall, you built a home. One where your peace is not up for negotiation. One where your love is sacred, not scattered. One where anyone who enters must come with respect, honesty, and the willingness to meet you at eye level. Not above you, not below you, but beside you. That's the love you deserve. And until it shows up, you're not waiting. You're living, you're traveling, reading, laughing. You're taking care of your body and honoring your mind. You're tending to your inner world like a garden that finally gets the attention it always deserved. You're not waiting for a partner to feel alive. You're alive now, fully, fiercely, freely. And if someone comes along who can meet you in that space, not to fix you or complete you, but to walk beside you, you'll recognize them not by what they say, but by how they make you feel calm, seen, safe, expanded. But if they don't come, you're still whole. That's the most important truth of all. This woman, this version of you, is not a placeholder, not a backup plan, not a woman in waiting. You are complete. You are sacred. You are the culmination of every lesson, every loss, every tear, every quiet victory you've lived through. And your life? It matters, whether anyone else sees it or not. You don't have to be part of a couple to be valuable. You don't need a big family around you to be loved. You are allowed to define joy on your own terms, to wake up without needing anyone, to tell you who you are, to build a life that reflects your truth, your desires, your quiet power. There are others like you, scattered across the country, across the world, living in small homes, walking in quiet parks, sipping tea on porches, rediscovering themselves one breath at a time. Women who once thought they were broken, only to find they were becoming whole. Women who got tired of being invisible and instead chose to become unshakable. If this resonates with you, know this: you are not strange, you are not selfish, you are not too much or too late or too anything. You are exactly where you're meant to be. And if someone doesn't understand the beauty of a woman who has made peace with her own soul, that says everything about them and nothing about you. So take a deep breath and honor how far you've come. You didn't just survive, you grew. You didn't just let go, you soared. You didn't just live without a family, you built a new kind of family inside yourself. One built on love, on truth, on strength. And every time you wake up and choose yourself again, you send a quiet message to the world. This is what it looks like to be free. So if this spoke to you today, I want to invite you to share your experience in the comments. You never know who might need to hear your story. And if you'd like to keep growing alongside other strong, independent women just like you, please like this video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. You'll find community here, you'll find inspiration, but most importantly, you'll find space to just be exactly who you are. Here's to you, to your strength, your story, and your soul. You are not alone. You are with yourself. And that, my friend, is more than enough.